Hello and welcome to On the Preds with me, your host, Alex Doherty of A to Z Sports, and my co-host, as always, Sean Smith of A to Z Sports. We are ready to talk about the Nashville Predators, who have had a very eventful week when it comes to where things might end up for this team by the end of the season, and not in a good way. We are going to talk about just a few games that happened, and then also a lot about what could be happening over the next couple weeks. If I couldn't make it any more vague, I'm talking about selling. The Predators should be sellers. Sean, what's up?
Oh man, just a kid taxi service just rolled back into the taxi depot here after taking kids all over creation for sports and whatnot. So just another day in paradise. Alex, how are you?
Pretty good. And we are recording this on Monday. Yesterday, the Predators played the Minnesota Wild. We're going to talk about that game. Saturday, they played Florida. We'll talk about that game as well. I was at that one. But we got to start by talking about last Thursday. Just real quick, the Boston game was real bad. I know you were at that one, and we don't need to go into detail really, but just overall terrible, everything bad.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, I think it's funny. There was a lot of you had to know going into that game that is the best team in the NHL, and I don't think that there is some expectation that the Predators were going to dominate them and come out and beat them 5-0. But I think should have been, in my opinion, some expectation that they would come out and put up a fight. And it just looked bad all across the board. And I think as we've alluded to several times, that if the Predators are a playoff team that can get into the playoffs even via the second wild card spot, that's the caliber of team they're going to have to play yet again in the playoffs this season. Facing the Colorado Avalanche last year, you're going to have to play the number one team in the conference, and that's not going to end well based on what I saw against the Bruins.
5-0 loss. Boston is very good. Nashville is not very good. Saturday, inexplicably, the Nashville Predators offense, well, not inexplicably, but the Nashville Predators offense, really that first period was pretty crazy. There were 5 goals in that first period. Nashville has a 3-2 lead, then they get a couple more in the second, and then a couple more in the third. And it's a 7-3 win for Nashville, the largest goal output for Nashville this year, following a shutout where they didn't score at all against Boston. Florida is considerably worse than Boston. Florida's, they might not be a playoff team.
Right.
But they do have good players. I mean, they got some good talent on that team, and I think their goaltending is suspect, but that's about the only thing, really. I mean, like, they got some good players. And, I mean, after that game, it didn't feel that different. I mean, I think that they were glad to have gotten some goals, right? I mean, there were certain guys you like to see get on the scoreboard. I mean, Matt Duchene gets a nice goal. Ryan Johansson scores on the power play. Roman Josi scores. Tommy Novak had 2 goals in that game quietly. And Martin McDonough had 3 assists. He talked about after the game that there were no passengers on the ice. And, he had really kind of called out the team after the Boston loss. So there's some of that going on. But I didn't get the feeling after the Florida game that something had changed or there was some tide that turned. I just feel like it was a good first step, but then it came down to Minnesota and, that result. Let's talk about that real quick. So did you watch the full Minnesota game or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
despite all the streaming or the TV problems, I managed to use AirPlay from my phone to watch it. So I did manage to watch it. Yes.
Yeah. So there were some weird issues with that. So Nashville has is down 2-1 after 2 periods. And really, like, I didn't think that they looked very good in the first frame, and they didn't look very good in the second frame. And then in the third period, it's like, well, Kaprizov puts them up 3-1. And then they have a 4-minute penalty to kill. Nita Ryder had a high stick. And then right after that, Roman Josi gets a kind of a lucky bounce in front, and then gets a goal. And then Nino Niederreiter, with 47 seconds left, ties it up. Another somewhat fortunate bounce, but perhaps the most fortunate bounce of the evening was with 20 seconds left. Ryan Hartman sends one on. It goes off McDonough and then off of him. And I'm sorry, he didn't shoot the puck. Jonas Brodin did, but it goes off of McDonough and off of Hartman and into the net. 20 seconds left to rip the hearts out of the Nashville Predators and give them Minnesota Wild a 4-3 regulation win. Thoughts on that game?
It's one of those situations where you're pulling the goaltender, you're hoping for that goal that can tie things up, and it happens. And you, at that moment, think, just considering what was at stake, I think, for this game, okay, they managed to do the thing. That's always a question. They're going to pull the goaltender. They're either going to end up, giving up an empty net goal, or they're actually going to make it happen, or nothing will happen. And they make it happen. That goal comes up, the game's tied, and you think to yourself, they're going to take this game into overtime. And quite honestly, I almost always like Nashville's chances in overtime. I don't know why that is. I just feel like they excel at 3-on-3. At least they have, historically speaking. But man, to then have that turnaround so quickly, see the Wild retake the lead with so little time left, it just seems like that's the story of the season right there. You have this effort late in the game to try to claw your way back in, and then right at the last second, take it away. Just really, overall, I was surprised, honestly, that they got 2-3 goals. I didn't see that happening the way things had been going, but they did manage to make it happen. The game, you'd think coming off of that game against Florida that you'd bring some of that fire with you, but it just wasn't there.
The Predators are 2-3 after the All-Star break. Is that right? Let me double check that. I think that's right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
No, 2-4. Sorry, 2-4. Yeah, 2-4. 2-4 after the All-Star break. 6 games. They're 2-4. There are 28 games left. They are at 58 points. You can see the record up there. They're 26, 22, and 6. And they would need to get probably 20 wins in their final 28 games. They would need to go 20-8. So you're talking about multiple winning streaks, or at least one winning streak of like at least 10 games, right? 8 to 10 game winning streak. Like that, you'd have to get that in order to be on the pace to make the playoffs. And there's 0% of my opinion that thinks they can do that. And I don't think anyone really believes that they could even come close. I mean, they could rattle off. They could go 16-12 and feel pretty good about it. But that's not going to do it. Like 16-12 would be 16 wins over some pretty good teams. But that wouldn't be enough. Like that, it wouldn't really come close. They would put them at 90 points.
Yeah. You haven't seen the team be able to run that kind of streak at all this season. And I don't know why anyone would have the confidence that they could just suddenly pull it together at the end of the season. Personally, I don't. And that's based on the historical data that you and I and anyone available, it's available to everybody, has, looking at the results of the season, that's not a result they've been able to have all season. I have no idea why they would suddenly be able to do it. And it's not, if they'd done it early in the season, I'd say, oh, maybe they can repeat that, but it hasn't happened. I mean, that's an incredible run. And I just don't think this team has it. I don't know.
So we will find out exactly what David Poile thinks. He sort of promised. I mean, I think he showed his hand last week by saying it really came down to this weekend. And I think he was including Boston in that weekend, extended weekend.
Yeah.
And so they went 1-2 in those games. That's not good enough. And in one of those games they had no chance. And in another one they were pretty good. But then in the one that probably mattered the most, Minnesota, they lost in regulation.
Yeah.
So the 1 and 2 in those, again, like I said, 2 and 4 since the All-Star break. Just that pace is not good enough. It won't do it. So that's why I think it's officially time. They need to sell. There's no doubt, no doubt about it. They could reel off a few wins here against like Vancouver tomorrow, against Arizona on the road, San Jose on the road. Doesn't matter. They are too far down. They have too many teams in front of them that are much better than them. So having said that, we need to think about, we talked last week about some options about selling. And today I kind of want to talk about, instead of specific players, I want to talk about strategies for selling that I think will result in a way out for Nashville. I know you want to talk about one that will almost, I mean, I don't think it'll definitely happen, but it has to be on the table. You're going to talk about one that has to be on the table, and I'm going to talk about one that will be unpopular, but I think needs to happen. It has to do with trades, and it has to do with trades.
Oh,
Why don't you start and give people your take on what one thing the Predators need to do, and then after that, I'll talk about mine.
so I think one of the biggest things, and let's go ahead and say that it is the year of our Lord 2023, Alex, and something that David Poyle has not done in a very, very long time. I think, and I don't have the research in front of me, but I want to say the last time David Poyle did this was in 2014. I could be wrong. I'll double check myself before I publish anything. But I think they need to be willing to do it at this point, as they need to look into retaining salary on some of the larger contracts in order to make that contract palatable for another team.
In my memory, I don't think he's ever done it, but who are you thinking that he might have retained? Oh, it was Devin Dubnyk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just saw it. I just was looking at it. That is weird. I do not remember that.
I don't either, but there it is.
Retaining Devin Dubnyk. Something's weird. I mean, I believe it. Anyways, but that trade was pretty minor. I mean, Dubnyk ended up being pretty good for Minnesota for a couple of years.
It wasn't a ton of money either.
Yeah.
It's not the type of money that I'm talking about right now. But there's a second part to that whole equation of retaining salary that I'll discuss in much greater detail in an article I have forthcoming at A to Z Sports. So,
okay,
I advise everyone to keep an eye out for that article coming soon. But I want to say that may be the first bitter pill that may need to be swallowed if there's a way out of this.
Yeah, salary retention. There's a lot of rules about it, and I think it is something that needs to probably happen because of where the Predators currently sit with their big contracts. I'm not convinced it'll happen. I think it's still tough. I mean, only because I think the rest of the league, there's so many teams that would be somewhat interested in those players that don't have the room, and like don't have the room even next year.
Right.
Don't have the room to take it on. But go ahead and give us one player that you think that they could retain salary on. Give us one of them.
I think they could retain salary on Granlund, for example.
Yeah.
I think Granlund's not having a great year. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue with me or disagree. And as a result of having, let's say, one down year, his contract becomes a little bit harder to move, just because you're basing this trade or basing the movability of the contract on not just the value, but of course the term as well. And so for someone to say, okay, we're willing to give up assets in order to take on this contract, you're going to have to retain some of that salary as a way. Like I said, I think the word I used is palatable. You're going to have to make that contract a little bit easier to swallow for the other team, so they're not having to invest so many resources into it. Sure, they can clear up a little bit of cap space by trading a player, but the Predators aren't looking to take on big contracts. They're looking to unload some money to free up some space. So they wouldn't want to get somebody back who's going to take up all that space. So they retain some salary. They replace it with somebody whose contract is a lot less. And while they may have to carry that cap space I think there's a way out of this, by the way, they'll have to carry that cap space for the length of the contract. So it's not just the rest of the season. It's not just next year. It is for the full life of that contract. But, you can get some stuff back in that sense if another team feels like, maybe their style of play on another team is more suitable to what Mikael Granlund's doing right now, or they think they can get some value or some use out of them, then it becomes a deal that can be made. But like you said, and I give a very good point, there's a lot of teams out there who don't have space this year, next year, the year after. So it just comes down to what David Poile can do and what he can make happen.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable take on what David Poile can do with that with the current contracts. I have another option that I think he should take advantage of, or at least attempt, if it's him that's even doing it. But before we do that, I want to talk about Relax the Back. You didn't say it. You didn't say ooh.
Oh. Let's try it again.
We're going to talk about Relax the Back.
Oh.
If you want to live better, feel better, and sleep better every day, you need to check out Relax the Back. And you really do. You got to go down there and check it out. They've got tons of customized comfort options for the office, for relaxing at home, for sleeping at night. The ergonomic office chairs, the zero gravity chairs, all of them perfect for getting your spine in the correct position. That is what it's all about at Relax the Back, is getting your spine in the right position so that you can get to sleep or get to work or just be comfortable the way that your body was supposed to work. They've also got quality recovery options in case you've been injured or you're just recovering from a workout. The massage chairs and recliners, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see them right on the screen there. Those things are amazing. You got to sit in them and try them out. They have so many different custom options, and they can form to your body just the way they need to. The beds, same thing. You can fix all the supports and raise them up and down just the way that you need for your body to get in the correct natural position. They know everything there is to know about the way your spine works and the way to relax your back, obviously, at Relax the Back, because that's what they do. They are experts in that field. You just got to check it out. Go to Relax the Back in Green Hills. It's at 2020 Glen Echo Road. Walk in there and tell them that we sent you, and tell them that you are interested in trying to fix your pain problems or fix your sleeping problems or anything like that, because they have a sleep agent on hand every day. Talk to Glenn. He owns the store, and he'll also tell you about the 4 pillars of wellness: healthy sleep, healthy body, healthy work, and healthy mind. 4 of them. Okay. So in looking at this, I am putting together a kind of a plan. I mean, it's not really a plan. It's more of just like, here's the steps that the Predators need to take from here on out, because there's a lot that needs to be fixed. But I think if they follow this sort of path, they'll be on their way. I'm not going to go into all the steps right now because I'm still writing it, and it'll be out tomorrow, which is Tuesday, before the Vancouver game, sometime during the day. But I did want to talk about one of them because I think it's a good discussion, and I want to see what you think about it. And that is, I do not think they're going to be able to get away with trading one of these contracts without tossing in a sweetener. Unless they're not willing to package a sweetener with a bad contract, they'll be able to move it. And I think it's going to have to be a pretty big one. There are 2 names I think won't be on that list, but here's a list of players that I think. Okay, so here's the way I think about it. One of these 3 players needs to be traded: Ryan Johansson, Mikael Granlund, Matt Duchene. Of those 3, I think the order should be Johansson, then Granlund, then Duchene. Johansson, just because you say you get more money out of it. You shed more money. Granlund would be the one to trade for hockey reasons, but if you're trying to get out of this, you need to get out of the $16 million that you owe Johansson over the next 2 years. If you were to trade two of them, I think it would be Johansson and Granlund. I think trading Duchesne would send the wrong message, and I think it would. I think he's realistically the one that has the more production ahead of him left. You know what I mean? Like, he could actually still score 20 to 30 goals, maybe just 20, but like, I don't think those other guys are going to do that. So anyways, Johansson, Granlund, Duchesne. I think with those guys, you're going to have to part with Luke Evangelista or Afanasiev or Zach LaRue or Joakim Kimmel. You're going to have to part with one of those guys in order to trade that guy. I don't think Askarov needs to be on the list. I don't think he's really should be a part of that. And I hesitate to even put Joakim Kimmel on there because I think he could actually be your number one forward prospect anyways. Evangelista is the hardest one to swallow, but I think a team would be willing to listen to taking Johansson if he comes with Luke Evangelista, who is a very strong, high ceiling kind of skilled forward. But you've got to try something. You've got to package this. I mean, Zach LaRue would be fine. I think that would be okay. That might not be enough though. Maybe if you send Zach LaRue and another guy, or if you send Zach LaRue and a draft pick to get rid of Johansson. I mean, this has got to be. It's going to look like. Well, it's not going to look like the PK Subban thing. That was a little different, but it's going to have to look like maybe more like the Ryan Ellis, but that's not even really the same. They've never really done this. They've never really packaged a sweetener to dump a contract like this.
No.
What do you think about that?
We're in uncharted waters, Alex. You think about the old pirate maps of the sea and over where they didn't know what there was. They would just write, here there be dragons. And I think that's where we are right now is that we're heading into something that the Predators haven't done before. And it's funny because this is, while one of the newer franchises, it has been around for quite a while. So the fact that this is uncharted water, it's going to be different. When you say to me, Alex, when you say a sweetener and you throw out, dare I say, the best Luke from the summer of Lukes, it hurts.
I know
it hurts me here in my heart, right? Because this is you feel like, okay, you want to unload a big contract so you can make room for some of these younger players, some of these cheaper players that can come in over the next few seasons and become, realize their full potential in the NHL. Then you're going to tell me, no, Shaun, I'm taking him away from you.
I think the important part to remember is you're not getting rid of all of them. You've got to take those four guys that I mentioned, and you're getting rid of one of them in order to dump a contract. Yes, it is uncharted territory, but they are in such trouble with what they've built, and they've got to realize that this is the only way out of it. I mean, like, it's not the only way out of it. A buyout is also there. I mean, like, I looked at a Mikhail Granlund buyout. It would save you some money, but does he really want another dead cap on the books? And a buyout for Johansson, I think, would be a mistake. I think you need to if you're going to trade him, I think you just trade him with a sweetener. Maybe the sweetener doesn't have to be that much. Maybe you start with a LaRue, or maybe you start with with one of the defensemen, Jack Mateer, or maybe even Luke Prokop. Because the other thing is this, I think if you've got to sacrifice something in order to get what you want. It's just a general life rule, right? I mean, like, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your time in order to hang out with your kids, or you're going to have to sacrifice playing on your phone in order to do your job. You're going to have to sacrifice something. You have to sacrifice something in order to solve a problem. Yeah. And they've got a big problem. It's not going to go away on its own. No one is going to step in and just take Johansson's contract or take Granlund's contract. They're not that stupid. They're going to ask for something for it. So I think that's what they're going to have to do. Unless they can convince someone that Johansson for $4 million is worth it, and they want to retain that salary.
I think what's hard is what you're looking at, and I think the appetizer to this just just disgusting meal that you're going to have to eat here,
Yeah.
is that this is the core that was signed long term to win the Stanley Cup, and it's not doing it. It's not going to happen. Not with this configuration. And so you can keep the contracts you have and expect the same, maybe worse results for several more seasons until some of these contracts expire. But the cold hard reality is that if you've bet your future on this and it's not paying off, you're going to have to give something up, whether it's retained salary, whether it's dead cap space, or whether it's one of your precious Lukes, Alex.
The other thing is, well, there's one thing I should mention is that I don't think that move, packaging a sweetener to unload a contract, is something you do in a vacuum. It's not the only fix. Like it only really works if it's a part of a package of several other steps, which is part of what I'm writing tomorrow. And if you see it in that context, I think it does make sense, because there are other ways that they're going to have to reload, right?
Right.
You're not going to be able to get out of this without being bad for a couple of years. Not tanking. Right. I'm not talking about tanking for whoever the next top prospect is. But you're not going to be very good, because you're going to unload a good player, and you're going to have to be okay with playing like a younger bad player for a little bit. Maybe like, not bad, but you're going to have to be okay with playing, shall we say, what's the word? An inexperienced player for a while. If you unload players like Johansson, Granlund, Dante Fabro, Matthias Ekholm, Ryan McDonough, if they're interested in trading any of those guys away, they're going to have to deal with, okay, well, looks like next year Luke Prokop or Jack Mateer or Ryan Ufko or whoever it is going to come in. So I'm not entirely convinced that they would ever that they would ever do this, but I do think that it's a strategy, and I think it's one that would work. I think there's teams out there that would be willing to do that. There's teams out there that would be willing to take Luke Evangelista, take the Johansson contract, cut him, or maybe just not play him, or maybe play him but don't care about him, and develop Evangelista into their next good player. One team that might do that, Detroit. Detroit has plenty of cap room. They need some good young players. They would do it. Maybe even Anaheim. Anaheim needs some good young players to go with their burgeoning young core players. Maybe they would do it. So there are some teams out there that would do it. I don't think the top teams would do it. I don't think like Pittsburgh well, they're not really a top team. I don't think Colorado would do it. I don't think Tampa would do it, but you could convince a bad team to do it.
I think you're right. It's just, I think it's a bitter pill to swallow. It's a meal that no one wants to eat. But I think at some point, if you want to have the opportunity to rebuild without just being, hey, we don't have any room for anybody, we're just going to have to go with what we have, we're going to have to make some other bad choices to get out of this, then that's just going to have to be the way it goes. I mean, again, one of those things has to happen, I think. I don't know how you get out of it without doing one of those things. You're not going to find a magic trade partner or an expansion team that's going to be willing to take on some cap space for a favor down the road or something like that. That those days are, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, behind the NHL right now. Oh, yeah. So again, don't like any of it, but again, it's not going to happen with this configuration of this team. So you've got to do what you've got to do to move on.
Moving to the present, just one small bit of team news. Apparently they've waived Mark Jankowski. Mark Jankowski last played in the Arizona game, that fateful bad Arizona game. He played 8 minutes. He had no shots. Mark Jankowski has been waived. So like this is one thing this team does that just sometimes just things don't make any sense. I don't understand why they waived him. I'm not saying they should play him. I'm not saying that they shouldn't waive him. Why did they do it now? Nothing really makes sense about why now. Why did they waive him right now? Why not waive him if they weren't going to play him of his last few games? Why not just waive him a week ago?
Right.
Why not play him again to see if he's improved from that Arizona game and then waive him? What did he do in the last 10 days or whatever it's been to just be waived? I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it doesn't really mean anything regarding injuries with, Forsberg. It doesn't say anything about Forsberg. It doesn't say anything about Carrier. It doesn't say anything about anything changing for that. It's just waived him. Okay.
Well, they don't need to get him off the roster for either of Carrier or Forsberg to come back.
They don't need him off the roster. They don't need to waive him. I just don't. Again, it's just like one of those decisions. It's like they just did it. Like now's the time. Okay, all right, fine. And then the only other thing is they got 3 games. They got Tuesday against Vancouver. That's a home game, and then they go on the road to play San Jose Thursday, and the Sunday at Arizona. Right. Like we said earlier, they could actually probably win all 3 of these games. And they probably will now. They'll probably go and just beat all 3 of these teams. It doesn't matter because they are not going to go 20-8 the rest of the way, or even 19. What is it?
6-2.
19-6-2. Yeah,
right, that doesn't make sense. That's too many games.
Whatever. 19-6-1 or
maybe I don't know.
Whatever the math is. I think 19-6-2. Yeah, that would work. 19-6-2 would be 20 points. I mean, 40 points. 40 points.
Okay.
Anyways, they're not going to do that even if they win these 3 games because there's too many tough teams coming up. So, I'm interested. I think it's still worth watching. See how the team responds. What does this team look like when they're obviously going to be sellers? Who plays hard? Who plays well?
Yeah.
How do some of the young guys develop? I mean, I feel like I've noticed Juuso Parssinen more recently. Maybe Cody Glass hasn't been as noticeable, but he's also missing Forsberg, so that makes a difference.
Noticed a lot of Tommy Novak.
I noticed a lot of Tommy Novak. He looked really good in Minnesota and against Florida. So some of the young guys, good to see what they're going to do. Anything else?
I mean, the Jankowski mystery, but who knows? I mean, they've just decided, you know what, we're ready to move on and send him back down, let him work in Milwaukee for the rest of the season.
Maybe they're hoping someone takes him.
maybe they are, or maybe they want to send him down and bring somebody else back up. I mean, it just depends on what they're looking for, really. So maybe they're bringing McCarron back. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. That's what they're doing.
You think so?
I had kind of forgotten about McCarron, but I wouldn't be surprised. They got to get tougher, Shaun.
Yeah. Got to play a little more jam.
Yeah, they got to get more jam. They didn't have enough jam.
Minnesota. Not enough jam.
That's
some extra jam.
Right. You nailed it. They're going to call it McCarron. That's exactly what's going to happen. Yep. Okay. Well, we'll see it. We'll look out for the McCarron news tomorrow. Thank you for listening to the show. That's all for us today. You can check out all of our Preds coverage at A2ZSports.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at AlexDarty1. Follow Shaun at SCSNSH, and we will see everybody next week.